Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We'll just wait just a little bit so that everybody who signed up for this event actually is here and able to catch everything from the beginning. In the meantime, if you want to share your LinkedIn profile in the chat so that you can connect with your colleagues, feel free.
Just a quick question, Alessandra. The questions, they have to write them in the chat. There is no way that they can ask them in the Zoom call.
There's a Q&A box alternatively, okay. Or they can raise hands and we can let them speak if they want to.
Okay, very good. Good to know. Thank you.
Okay. I think we can start now. So hello and welcome to everyone joining us today. I'm Alessandra and I'm a junior project manager at SwissNext Brazil here in Rio de Janeiro. SwissNext is an initiative of the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation in collaboration with the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. The SwissNext network promotes collaboration between Switzerland and other countries in science, education, and innovation. And one way to connect scientists and researchers is with events like this, learning about opportunities to reinforce the knowledge exchange between Switzerland and the rest of the world. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat or the Q&A section. You may also share your LinkedIn profile to connect with your fellow colleagues. After our speaker's presentation, we will answer any questions you might have regarding the fellowship. I am delighted to have Braida Thom here with us today. She joined the World Food Systems Center as project manager in November 2019, where she manages the Future Food Fellowship, among many other things. She completed her bachelor studies in agricultural science and her master's in agricultural economics at the ETH Zurich and BOKU Vienna. Since May 2019, she also has been working with the ETH Zurich Sustainable Agro Ecosystems Group, where she is in charge of monitoring and evaluating the project Post-Harvest Cocoa Processing and Farmer Support Centers. Implemented by Cabots AG, the project aims to counter risks along the cocoa value chain and implement sustainability initiatives in the Ivory Coast. Braida, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. So I will quickly try to share my screen. Just a second. Something does not work very well. Okay. So, bem-vindo a todos. Very warm welcome to the presentation, a little information session of the Future Food Initiative. Today, I will present you quickly the initiative and the fellowship that is part of the initiative. And in the end, we will have time for discussions and questions about the program. If you have any questions already during the presentation, feel free to write them in the chat already. We can do that. We can talk about them afterwards. And to make it a bit more interactive, I guess it would be great if you maybe in the end raise your hands and we can then also let you speak and talk. So there is not only us talking and you writing, but we can rather have an exchange. So the Future Food Initiative was established to further expand research and education in the area of food and nutrition sciences It aims to bridge competences from academic and industrial research in Switzerland to develop solutions that unlock the power of healthy, nutritious, and sustainable and affordable food. The initiative catalyzes a number of key partners in the Swiss food system to create an environment which allows to address in a collaborative way some of the grand challenges our food system faces. With its strong research-oriented industrial sector, an innovative startup scene, and world-leading universities like ETH and EPFL, Switzerland offers a unique ecosystem for collaboration across the food sector. The initiative was launched from the ETH Zurich and the EPFL together with the industry partners Givaudan, Nestlé, and Bühler as kind of starting partners. And the idea is to bring further industry partners on board in the coming years. So the fellowship is kind of a big part of the Future Food Initiative, and the program is structured around annual calls for proposals for young researchers who propose projects that target these future food issues and work in the areas of nutrition, production, packaging, and health. The program is a post-doctoral fellowship that provides a funding of 390,000 Swiss francs to enable the fellows to work for 3 years and on their projects with a university that is either ETH or EPFL and collaborate with the Swiss industry partners. The funds that are awarded, they cover the fellow's salary according to the regulations of ETH and EPFL, and furthermore the project costs. So we had 2 calls already, and we have 8 fellows that work on very diverse topics in a lot of different areas. So we have Mariana that looks at the conservation of biodiversity through diversified farming systems. She's a social scientist and really looks at the topic from with a sociologic lens. Then we have Chunyan that looks at ways how one could prevent obesity. So she's searching for natural compounds that could be integrated in the food and do have the effect of obesity prevention. Joan is exploring the potential of the ancient Philippine crop kabok millet, and is kind of for the first time analyzing that crop also from a biochemistry perspective, and then tries to find ways how it could be introduced and used for development of food products. Nilofar, she is working on sensors that could be integrated into food packaging, and these sensors do detect gases that are produced, that are kind of in the environment of the food packaging, and then could tell the consumer or the company that sells the products like how the food is doing there, if it's still fine or should be cooled more, and so on. So kind of a smart packaging to avoid food waste. And the fellows of 2020, some have already started their fellowship, others will only start this month. There we have Hannah that looks at ways to reduce the astringent perception and improve the sensory quality of plant-based beverages. Eva is looking at the benefits and the impact of food and exercise-derived lactate on muscular health with the aim of developing functional foods. Denise, she's also working with packaging, looks at different barrier materials that could avoid food waste while at the same time being produced in a sustainable way to avoid plastic waste. And Georg, he looks at the microbiome and how the microbes in the gut transform raw food constitutes to healthy metabolites. So you see, there's really a big diversity of backgrounds and topics that fit into this very interesting topic of future food. Oh. This year, we will put special emphasis on the following 5 topics. So it's plant-based nutrition, protein and beyond, research on the microbiome, on climate change mitigation, healthful nutrition for low-income population, sustainable processes and food design. So these 5 topics will be prioritized. However, if there are interesting projects that are in line with the overall aims of the initiative, they are considered, or they will be considered as well. But these 5 have priority. So coming to the eligibility criteria for the applicants. So there's quite a list, and the full list can be found online, but I think the 4 most important points are that the applicants must hold a doctorate and must have obtained it at a maximum of 3 years prior to the submission deadline, which means 3 years prior to the 31st of March 2021, and latest by 30 September 2021. So if you have not yet completed your PhD, you can still apply for the fellowship if you have a signed letter by the department chair that your defense will take place before the 30th of September 2021. The applicants cannot have had an affiliation with ETH Zurich or EPFL during the 12 months that precede the submission deadline. But if they had an affiliation before, that's fine. And furthermore, the applicants cannot have held a faculty equivalent position, as for example, the position of an assistant professor in a university or another higher academic institution. And last but not least, the applications must be written in English, and yeah, the language of the fellowship will be English. For the application material, so if you have an idea for a project, I suggest before you start working on all the application material, one very important thing is that you need a signed letter by a host professor that is willing to support your project and host you in their laboratory. So if you have an idea, I really strongly suggest as soon as possible to get in contact with the respective host professor or with the host professor that you would like to work with to exchange about the idea, and then based on that, develop your research proposal. Yeah, and then as I said, you have to hand in a research proposal, the letter by the host professor, a letter of motivation and CV with a list of your publications, a list of potential external reviewers that we could contact to get reviews of your research proposal, and a list of potential authors of recommendation letters. And then finally, the timeline. So the submission deadline for this year's call is the 31st of March. We will then look at all the applications and then let you know in May if you're invited for the second phase of the process or not. So the second phase would be face-to-face interviews that are planned to take place, or they will take place on the 10th and 11th of June. The idea is that they would take place in Bern in Switzerland, and that the host professor would have to cover the travel costs. But given the current circumstances, I think that they will be, as last year, already held online. And then in the second half of June, we will communicate the formal decision of the evaluation board, and you could start the fellowship afterwards. And usually that will be between October and December 2021. The exact date can be negotiated with the host professor. Exactly. So yeah, this is it from my side. So I suggest that we just open the floor for discussions and questions. So
thank you very much, Braida. It was very interesting. I was just wondering, when you said applicants need to have a letter of recommendation from a host professor, how easy is it to actually get in touch with the professors? Are there possibilities, for instance, to, I don't know, have an informal chat through a Skype or Zoom meeting?
Regarding the host professors, if you go to our homepage, futurefoodinitiative.ch, we do have a list with interested host professors. However, that list is not, if you find another host professor, that's fine as well. And then in the first step, I suggest you contact them via email, and such an informal meeting can definitely be asked for. If you prefer discussing your project idea on Zoom, you just write an email to the possible host professor and ask him or her about the possibility. Sometimes they get a lot of emails, definitely. So it can take a while until they respond. So therefore, try to do it as soon as possible if you're interested. And there is also always the option to contact us, and we could try to build then the link. Yeah.
Great. I have a question here from Rodolfo, who's asking whether it's possible to conduct the research in the partner industries with the support by a host professor from ETH or UBFL or from the list.
So a strong collaboration with industry is very, very likely, and it's also one of the aims of the initiative to really have research that is tackling issues that are of relevance for the industry. So that is indeed possible. However, you would still be employed at ETH, EPFL, but you could already kind of include that in your research proposal, that you want to have a very strong collaboration with an industry partner. And there you can actually also contact them, or if you don't have a contact yet, contact us to talk to them in advance as well. So not only the host professor, but also the industry partner that is of interest to you.
And so in general, there are quite a lot of interactions with the industry partners, right? Like network.
Exactly. It always depends also a bit on the fellow, how active in seeking for such a collaboration they are. But it is, like the goal is really that there is a collaboration. We also organize biannual networking events where we really bring the fellows in contact with the respective persons that work in areas related to the topic of the fellow. So we really try to build that link and promote the collaboration.
Great, that's very useful. I have Fernanda here asking, saying he has more than 3 years since he obtained his PhD. So I guess he's not eligible from the criteria you mentioned earlier, right?
So more than 3 years, yes. Unfortunately, the 3 years are really a strict eligibility criterion. So if you have had, finished your PhD more than 3 years ago, that's not possible.
And
however, I mean, it depends a bit. Is it your defense or the certificate of your PhD? I mean, if the certificate of your PhD is less than 3 years, then that works. But yeah, if not, it doesn't work, unfortunately.
Thais also asked regarding the topic that you shouldn't have held a faculty equivalent position. Does it also apply in case of substitute professor?
We have not had this case yet, but I'm pretty sure that it applies to substitute professor. Maybe, Thais, could you tell me what it is exactly, the substitute professor position? Because if it's if you have had a contract as a professor with a professor position, then it doesn't work. Yeah.
I think, Thais, if you want to answer in the chat or maybe raise your hand to speak, feel free.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me? Thank you. The cases, like in Brazil, we have some vacancies, like when an associate professor, they go outside for licenses, like maternity license or something like that. We have some, we can like apply for substitute professor and stay in the position for 6 months or 9 months or something like that. Yeah, I don't know if it is the same case as like a real professor position.
No, I think it's the same. It's the same as the real professor position, since it also applies for assistant professors. But if you want, you can send me your email address and I will take another look at it. And in case you would be eligible, I would let you know.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Welcome. Great.
Does anyone else have a question? I was also wondering, Braida, which edition of the fellowship is it? Did you have already a lot of fellows in the past, or when did it start?
So in 2019, we had the first call, and then, in spring of 2019 and in the fall of 2019, the first fellows started it. So it's still a very, very young project, only being in its third year.
I have Bruno here asking if the collaboration would be only with EPFL ETH professor, or would it be possible to include professor from university in other cantons, like EPFL partners in Fribourg, or HESSO? I think it's the Haute École.
So your contract will be at ETH or EPFL, and you need a host professor from one of the two universities that is willing to host you. However, you can definitely collaborate with others as well. Build that into your proposal already. If you then have several letters by host professors, that's fine, but one letter has to be by a professor of ETH and EPFL. What we had in the past as well is that some persons had letters by a host professor and additionally a letter by a responsible person within the companies of the industry partners that also collaborates with them, so that's possible. Yeah.
Great. Pedro is asking, how many researchers can be selected for the program for each call? And also a question regarding topics, if there are any researchers working with fermented products.
Okay, so the researchers, we do not have a specific number. It's actually quite for a bit of a coincidence that both years were four researchers. And the evaluation board really looks at the quality of the proposals and finances the proposals that they really want to see research happening on. Regarding the fermented products, there is, I'm not totally sure about EPFL, but at ETH, there are some professors that work with it. There I would check out the list with host professors. So there is Eric Windhap, there is Alexander Mattis, there's also Laura Nyström that could be potential host professors. However, I think it depends a bit on what kind of fermented products and what aspect of the fermented products you look at. If you look at the health benefits of it or at the biochemical composition, or rather at the design of fermented food products. So that, depends a bit.
And are there also opportunities for the fellows to, for instance, teach a seminar? Is it something that could be offered, or it's really research focused and the idea is dive into the research?
Research is definitely the main aspect or main activity of the fellowship. However, if seminars can be taught by the fellow, that depends on the host professor. So I think that's very on an individual basis, and also depends on your interest. I guess if there is a strong interest to do so, I'm pretty sure the host professors do support that. Of course, if you're only teaching and research, then only second, that doesn't work. But if there's interest in teaching, that's something that can be discussed with the host professor. Maybe already in the phase of the proposal, since maybe some other research can come out of this interest of teaching.
Rodolfo is asking whether the project must be undertaken in 3 years or may be a shorter project.
So the fellowships are for 3 years. I guess, no, that's set. If you're finished earlier, I guess that's no problem. And I'm sure there are always new questions that come if you're in the process. But if this question is more related to the fact that you only want to be in Switzerland for 2 years and have that as a timeline, that would not work. It's really designed around the 3 years.
Great. And coming back a little bit to the teaching aspects, are there also possibilities to participate in international conferences, for instance, present the research, or if at some point there is a paper being accepted in some journal. Is there funding for that as well?
Yes. So every project gets around 20,000 Swiss francs funding for consumables per year. And it's really the decision of the fellow what to do with that. If that money is invested for lab material, or the money can also be used to travel to conferences. So basically the money is for consumables that are directly related to the project, to the research project, but can also be used for advancing the personal career of the fellow. So conferences are in there as well.
Great. Sounds really amazing. It's a pity I don't have the right background, honestly. Does anyone have another question for Braida, or regarding the initiative as well? Maybe learning a little bit more about it.
So definitely check out the homepage. I sent you the link in the chat, futurefoodinitiative.ch. And if you're really interested to apply, read the guidelines carefully, and read all information that is on the homepage. There you can really find everything. And if there are still questions, either you contact me directly, or you write an email to the Future Food email address, and we're happy to get back to you.
That's very nice. It's always nice to have some support when you have so many questions regarding requirements and everything. Wow.
So no questions anymore, huh?
I think Rafael is starting to write something. Maybe he has a question for you. Maybe not. He's asking, where does the program start?
So the submission deadline is end of March, so in 2 months. And the fellowship would start between October and December 2021. If you're super fast, and you can, I guess, also start a bit earlier. Usually it takes a while until all the administrative processes are done, but that's possible as well. But much later than the December 2021 is not possible.
Great.
Yeah.
And is there some kind of support in terms of preparing visa documents, I imagine, for immigration purposes in Switzerland, or websites to kind of know where to live in Zurich and so on?
So there are some information on the website already, like about tips and tricks to live in Switzerland and in Zurich. For the visa and the permits, there we will have the HR of the respective university that will get in contact to you. Unfortunately, this can be a bit annoying sometimes, but it usually works out. It's only that depending on what date the PhD was completed, if it's more than 2 years ago, the permit in Switzerland, we just had that case now, has to be renewed every year, which should not be a problem, but it's something that Yeah, one has to be aware of in the beginning that the permit in certain cases has to be renewed every year. But we're trying to work on that. This should not be the case anymore. But that's politics, and unfortunately, not really in our hands.
And bureaucracy is always a headache. Whatever you are, it's always.
Yes. But the HR department has experience in this and will support you with the necessary documents.
It's always super useful. Erika is asking, what is the value of the scholarship for the personal expenses of the postdoctoral students?
So that's the salary. And the salary is, I think, in the first year around 80,000 Swiss francs per year. You can check that online. There's a small difference between ETH and EPFL. So personal expenses have to be covered with that salary. But I can say that the salary that you receive as a postdoctoral student is definitely high enough to cover all living costs in Switzerland.
Great, thank you. I think if someone has more questions, feel free. Oh, Braida, if you want to add something, you feel like perhaps you missed or you didn't mention, that would be super useful for us.
I think it's all. I mean, from our side, would be great to see many applications of you guys and to have the first Brazilian Future Food Fellow that we can welcome in Switzerland. So go for it, apply for the fellowship. We're looking forward.
Rafael is asking whether there are fees or charges he has to pay until the beginning of the program. I guess application fees or something like that.
No, there are no fees, no charges until the beginning of the program. If by miracle, I don't know, the interviews will really take place in person, then those costs will be covered by the travel costs will be covered by the host professor.
Okay, great. With also, I imagine, a kind of a living allowance to cover the costs while in Bern.
While being there, that's the idea, yeah.
Great. Hopefully, I hope the pandemic kind of allows us to travel again. Let's see what happens.
But otherwise, the interviews via Zoom, it works. It works as well. Not the same, but it works as well.
Yeah. He's also asking whether he has to submit a project. How long should the project proposal be, actually?
There's a template that you can find online. So it's like around 6-7 pages, depends a bit. But there's like different sections that have to be addressed. And yes, you have to submit your own project idea with a research proposal. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, that makes it easier for selection purposes.
Exactly, so yeah. And it should also be really in your hands, you working on the topic that you feel passionate about and not just executing a project idea of someone else. It's the homepage, yes. There you find all details, all information about the topics. Yeah, that's maybe also to mention the topics that I mentioned before. On the homepage, you also find a bit more concrete examples of what is meant with the 5 different topics.
Great. Did you also mention that if there is a project proposal that is not directly linked to one of these 5 projects, it could be considered, right?
Yeah, if you go and check out the aim of the initiative, there kind of the areas are listed where the initiative is active, so that could work. However, as I said, priority is given to the 5 topics. So if you have a project within those 5 topics, I recommend to try to go for that.
And do these 5 topics change with each call, or has it been the same?
Yes, they change a bit. Some topics come and go. Now, for what was in all 3 calls, of course, a topic was alternative meat, alternative protein sources. So that kind of stayed. This year it got extended a bit to beyond protein, so not just looking at the protein content of alternative meat sources, but also on other things like fibers and so on. But yeah, they slightly change with each call.
I can imagine, like, depending on the needs of what's happening.
Exactly. What is, what kind of hot topics are currently out there? Exactly.
Erica is asking that whether there's a possibility of working at an institution where the adopted language is French.
So the EPFL is located in Lausanne. That's a city in the French part of Switzerland. However, the university itself and the research is conducted in English. But of course, if you're in Lausanne, you will definitely be more exposed to the French language. And I guess if you would teach in Lausanne at bachelor level, it's French as well. But I think that if teaching, it would be at the master level and then it's English. Yeah.
And Rafa was asking where the fellow is based. Can he be based, choose between Zurich and Lausanne, or?
I think that depends on the host professor you choose, if the host professor is located in Zurich or in Lausanne. And there you really have to check out the homepage and search for a professor that would fit best to your project idea. And then depending on that, it's Zurich or Lausanne.
And also whether or not you need access to a lab, right? Or the university infrastructure, it's much harder to work from home when you need a lab. Not everyone has a lab in their basement.
Yeah, exactly. No, but you will then definitely be based in that research group, and the professor is responsible to provide you a working space and with all you need to conduct your research. And yes, currently a lot from home, but lab work is still possible.
Great. That's very important indeed.
The supervisor, I just see, the supervisor is your host professor in that sense, yes. And if you want to collaborate with other potential supervisors, that's something that has to be discussed in the setup of the project.
Great.
Yes, you have to contact the host professor because you need a letter of support by a host professor of either ETH or EPFL. So you have to get in contact with the host professor before you hand in your application. And
the list can be found on the website.
The list can be found on the website. However, if you find online another professor that you think fits better, feel free to contact them. The persons that are on the website, they explicitly expressed their interest in hosting a Future Food Fellow, so therefore they're there. Yeah.
Great. I think we can take one last question if anyone has a doubt. I think we've covered a lot of things today. Oh, Miriam is asking whether the fellow has research duties as well as teaching.
It's research duties, as the fellowship is really the 3 years should be used to conduct research. If there's some teaching activities that you would really like to do, you would have to discuss that with your professor. And then I'm sure that could be possible, but you don't have explicit teaching duties. Yeah.
Great. Well, Braida, thank you very much for your time, for presenting this amazing initiative, for answering all of our questions and the participants' questions. And yeah, I look forward to hosting maybe one of your future food fellows for a talk, virtual or in person, here in Brazil or in Switzerland somewhere, and getting to learn more about the amazing work you do about future food. It's really a fascinating topic, as well as relevant as it could ever be, actually.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Alessandra. It was a pleasure to be here. And yes, to you, apply for the fellowship, and we are looking forward to receive your applications. It would be nice if next year we can have an event with Swissnex where the Brazilian Future Food Fellows present their first research results. Who knows?
And hopefully taste some fermented products. Thank you.